Late night store clerks. What is the strangest thing you've seen? A guy came in to buy beer after hours. Told him I couldn't sell. It was against the law. He pulled out a badge, said, "I am the law." I called 911 and a cop shows up. Tells me if I can just let it go, I wouldn't have any more problems. I let it go. 2 weeks later, driving home late at night, way over the speed limit, I got pulled over. It was cop number 2. He came up to the car, recognized me, said slow down, and left. As a cop myself, I despise the I am the law type cops. No, you're not, fucker. You should be a role model in society. Being cocky in front of a store clerk just shows what a petty human being you are. I've never been a store clerk, but I was lucky enough to witness the following story. 7-11, circa 1996. A guy walks up to the surly clerk, who seemed to work 25 hours a day, and asks, "Do you sell eggs by the 1/2 dozen?" Clerk, "No, you have to buy a dozen." Guy, "I only need 6, clerk. I don't care. You get 12 or you get 0. Without saying another word, the guy walks back to get his dozen eggs, pays, and walks out. Then he throws his 6 unwanted eggs at the store window before driving off. Had a guy pull up to the pump, unhooked it wanting post-pay. Our policy said not to authorize it between midnight and 5 a.m., prepay only. I announced this to the dude over the loudspeaker. I'm pretty sure he was wasted. He continued to get more and more belligerent. When he started beating the pumps with a nozzle/hose, I called the cops. Dude starts banging on the door, locked, no way he would get in. Can't, gets frustrated, and finally just whips his deal out and starts wagging it in the general direction of the store. The CCTV is getting all this, so I just start laughing my ass off. Then the cops pull up, and 2 deputies put this poor, drunk, deal-wagging man away in the back of a police car. I quit a few months after that. 11:30 p.m. in AUS here, and on break working till 4 a.m. in a sort of restaurant/fast food store. Last week I saw a woman order 4 burgers, but wanted no ingredients other than lettuce. Not even any bread. I offered if she would like to just buy the lettuce as a topping and just pay $1.25 for it, but she insisted on ordering 4 servings of burger lettuce at full burger price. I never understood this mentality. A buddy of mine worked at a Burger King and had this woman who would come and order a burger plus XYZ toppings. When he informed her that what she wanted was a Whopper and that ordering one would save her about $2.50, she flipped her shit and insisted on paying more. So he went back and gave her a Whopper anyways. I work nights at a gas station in a pretty good neighborhood in New Hampshire, so usually it's pretty boring. One night I did have a customer really creep me out. I was just getting ready to close down the store when a little old man came in. He was small and dressed in khakis and a button-down shirt. I made the usual small talk of asking him how his day was going. Then as I was handing him his change, he firmly grabbed my wrist, made direct eye contact with me, and said, "Hell is a real place, and the devil has already got his hand on you, girl, be careful." I worked at a 24/7 gas station in a small college town. One night, the club across the street had a fight break out, and about 50 people were pepper sprayed by the police when they responded at about 1:30 a.m. 5 minutes later, cue 50 angry club goers busting into the store, running to the dairy cooler, dousing themselves in milk, and then running back out. I just stood there in utter confusion and then told my boss I didn't want the late shift anymore. Edit. Man, I really missed out on an amusing pun with utter confusion. Huh? Story time. In high school, I worked at a little mom-and-pop department store. We sold odds and ends at super high prices, and they eventually went out of business when I was a couple years into college. Anyway, one night I was working a closing shift, and that involved shutting down the registers, turning off all the lights, etc. We had just stocked these baby doll toys on the shelf that day, those motion-sensing ones that giggled and cooed when you got close to them. Well, the lights turning off must have triggered them, because after the first chunk goes out, we hear coos. Second chunk goes out, giggles. Third chunk goes out, and we hear Islam is the light. Needless to say, we shipped those suckers back to the manufacturer. They didn't know about the propaganda babies because they only said that phrase randomly, so it must have gotten past whatever testing process they had. Very freaky to hear in a dark store at night. I worked 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift in an all-night garage for a few months when I was 18. There was this weird Vietnamese dude who drove a white Honda Prelude and always filled up with 6 pounds and 66 pence of petrol. He wore the same pair of cutoffs every time with blotches and bruises all over his legs and used to literally wander in, leaning against the displays, pick up as many yogurts as he could carry, pay with a 50-pound note and stagger out. One time he came in with these 2, obviously prostitute, women who were draped all over him with the biggest pupils I have ever seen. They stood at the counter while I scanned all their yogurts, and he spoke for the first and only time. Staring at me, said to the women, "She can join us, can't she?" One of the women looked at me and said, "You'll make a lot more money if you come with us, darling." I nervously laughed, took their cash, and they left, grinning in silence. Beat-up kid comes to us at 3 a.m. Blood everywhere. Doesn't want us to call an ambulance. Our policy says if they don't want us to, we can't. So he was just chilling there bleeding. When we said we were going to call the cops to help, he bolted. My bet was he had a warrant out for his arrest, so that's why he didn't want any medical/police attention. Edit. Store policy clarification. That policy is meant for if a customer stubs their toe and either demands or declines an ambulance. If this kid is an adult and decides he doesn't want the medics called, incorporates they honor him. But had he been dying, obviously we would call. Edit numero 2. Only because my inbox is on hotter than my fam's mixtapes. We don't know this guy. If he has a warrant out for his arrest for a felony and we call an ambulance to pick him up, he would probably get violent with us, punching us away because he knows they come, he goes to jail. I work at a deli, and about a half hour from close a woman comes to the counter and just says lamb bone. We had it, so I go to the back freezer. Come back to the counter, and her daughter is there. She tells me to cancel the order. Meanwhile, her mom is right beside her repeating lamb bone over and over again. She had dementia, and I didn't even notice. In high school, I worked at a 24 pharmacy, which also had a small selection of beer. At about 2 a.m., this guy walks in 3 sheets to the wind, saunters over to the beer and grabs 2 12-packs. He comes up to the counter and slams the beer down, reaches into his pocket and pulls out a half-eaten taco and puts it on the counter. I couldn't say anything because I was so perplexed. I just let him walk out with the beer and told my bosses I thought he might have a gun also. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen. A couple weeks later, he apparently tried this at the family-owned gas station across the street and got shot. I was working the graveyard shift at a big grocery store doing the self-checkout registers. I was the only person around the store other than the stock crew and maybe 2 or 3 customers. I got a call from the fuel center, and the attendant was freaking out and told me someone was flipping over the Coke machines, WDF, right? And she was calling the police. I assumed the guy would just leave after that, so I held tight and waited for the police. Until this young blonde guy walks in and calmly walked past me. I tailed him for a few aisles, and once he turned the corner on the baby aisle, he took off running and grabbed a big display of Dr. Seuss books and flung it to the ground. He ended up getting arrested at the entrance by a few cops, and I got asked question after question. All in all, a fun night. Say, I like blue meth and diazepam. I do. I like them. Saying, and I would smoke them in a store. I would smoke them with a whore. I would smoke it here and there. I would smoke it everywhere. Chester Bennington came to my grocery store. You know, the guy from Lincoln Park? Now, he says he wasn't Chester Bennington. He was with his girlfriend or wife. He had tattoos, gauges, short black hair, and was really thin. He was very personable. He would come in late at night to get, I forget what he bought. But I said to him, "You look just like the guy from Lincoln Park." Chester Bennington? Yeah, I get that a lot. He came in twice, it was awesome. Not me, but a buddy of mine worked at a convenience store for a while and told me about a guy that bought out every single bottled soda they had. Coke, Dr. Pepper, Sprite, you name it. Just kept piling them on the counter until he had a couple $100 worth of soda TLDR, soda, addicts, sweeps, 7-Elevens of all sugary nectar of the gods. This sounds like a writing prompt for a story of a time traveler scooping up high value to the time of origin items, low-key to avoid getting caught. Time traveler sells outlawed sodas black market for lots of profit. I had a regular customer come in and buy the same exact beer and cigarettes every day. He was always muttering something, but I could never make out what he was saying. I really paid close attention one day, and he was rambling on about horse racing and the different odds for the horses. He was an interesting character. Also had a guy come in high as fuck with his mom, and he bought $60 worth of greeting cards. That guy was pretty cool. I guess my experiences were the opposite of most on here. Not a great part of town, but some wonderful people. I worked the midnight shift at 7 to 11, right off the highway. I'm female. The first night, there are an awful lot of people trailing in from the Doskasil factory next door. All night, at least one, if not more. We have cups for the police, and I was perfectly happy to hand these out for sodas or coffee, 8 ounces. But they always picked up snacks and stuff. Found out later that they staggered their breaks to always have a guy in the store, so I never had any problems. They did this anytime a girl worked the night shift. Faith in humanity equals restored. Not super late, but at the last minute, this dude came into Best Buy when I was working in the mobile store. He was tatted up, shaved head, had a Hispanic GF, and he was a pretty nice guy. Made me laugh a bit. I go to grab a phone out of the cabinet, and a coworker asked how I was going with the neo-Nazi. I was confused. Apparently, he had lots of tells, mostly from his tattoos. I thought my coworker was full of shit until I went back and noticed the small swastika tat on the space between his thumb and first finger. I got a little nervous being non-white, but he was super cool, personable, funny, and had a Hispanic GF for crying out loud. I consider it weird because he was so chill. Best neo-Nazi customer I've ever had. I read on an AMA a while back that lots of white guys join neo-Nazi gangs in prison for protection, and they have to get tattoos to seem legit. So maybe that's what was going on. A fat woman with real stringy hair and no teeth came in my store one night while I worked as a gas station clerk. She walked to the cooler and grabbed a soda, but the whole time she was in the store, she was looking at me all wide-eyed. She came up to the register, still looking dead at me and hardly blinking, put her soda on the counter, and then said, "I birthed you." "Excuse me?" I said, "I birthed you. You came out of my body. I'm pretty sure my mom gave birth to me. You came out of my body. I birthed you in the mountains of Tennessee." I just took her money, and then she left. Not so much a store clerk, but I worked the desk at a busy hospital in radiology on a night shift. This made me the only non-doctor who wasn't behind glass on the first floor when people came into the building. We were inner city and also had a psych hospital attached, so things got weird. The strangest one-time occurrence was a woman just jogging through fully naked, not even socks, no hospital bracelet, and about 20 seconds behind her, about 3 security men would run by asking which way. It was like a cartoon because she would run into a room, someone would scream, she'd run out the back door. It went on for a few hours. Work in a pharmacy. We had a guy come in and pick up a prescription, and he's standing there with a tub of ice cream and a spoon. I asked if he bought that. He just says, "Yeah," and walks off. 20 minutes later, I help a customer find something in the store. I see an empty shopping cart with a half-empty tub of melted ice cream. I reported it to a manager, and they said, "I didn't see it, so we can't do anything. But I know his name, and I know for a fact he's going to be back in 30 days for a refill." So that's my story. A large, fully grown black adult mental patient would come in from time to time and ask for free snacks. I'm not joking, he really was a mental patient. Apparently, he would escape from his assisted living/care building, and I would always have to call the cops to come get him. This would happen multiple times. It got to the point where as soon as he came in, I would just give him an ice cream and just sit him down to keep him occupied. He probably only had the intelligence of a small child. I worked at a Walgreens in a not-so-great area, and things would happen on the regular, but none were as weird as this. A man who was a regular came in every day to buy a bag of candy, had no teeth, and seemed really strange, but I was always cool with him since he was a regular. Then one night, after getting his candy, he comes back in which he has never done before, and looks at me with the strangest look on his face, and puts this small piece of paper on my counter. No words exchanged, and he leaves for real this time. Then weirded out, I opened the letter which said, in the creepiest chicken scratch handwriting, "Hey, my name. I was wondering if you would like to see Spider-Man with me tomorrow at the mall at 7 p.m. If so, meet me there at 6. And if I recall, there was some type of smiley face at the end." The dude was about 50-something, and I was around 20. Of course, I didn't go, but I never saw the dude in my store ever again. But I did recently see him at a FY and booked it when I saw him. Edit. I'm a dude. I worked nights at a campus library. One fine evening, I was greeted by a bat. It was clearly quite confused and spent a good 20 minutes making laps around the lobby. Every few laps, the cursed creature bombed one of us, flittering over our heads. I called Campus PD, expecting them to call Animal Control. Instead, every bored cop on campus showed up. One of them swatted the poor guy out of the air with his nightstick. The bat bit him when he picked it up. I used to do overnights at a 7 to 11 many years ago. There's a box in the cooler with loose beer that isn't on inventory. Basically, whenever some punk steals a single Bud Light, they have to write off the rest of the six-pack. Not exactly strange, but we got drunk a lot in the middle of the night. Nothing better than free beer and recently expired donuts. I worked at a 7 to 11 in a rough neighborhood for years. Most of the customers were regulars, including these 3 heroin addicts who came in one night. They were clearly high, so my coworker says, "Watch this." He proceeds to change the iPod to Michael Jackson's greatest hits. The heroin addicts immediately begin ballroom dancing around the 7 to 11. I'm talking foxtrot, waltz, jive, quick-step, samba. This went on for all 12 songs on that playlist. During this time, customers would approach the store, see 3 of them dancing up a storm, and immediately turn and walk away. That might not be the craziest thing that ever happened to me, but it was one of the most entertaining. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.